The most interesting man you have ever met probably was not the loudest or wealthiest person in the room. Social psychology research confirms why. Genuine fascination is not triggered by charisma or status. It is triggered by depth, contradiction, and lived novelty. A fighter who writes poetry. A CEO who surfs. What actually makes a man interesting is built, not performed. And it begins with a principle most men have completely backwards. Marco keeps a battered toolbox in his garage, the metal worn smooth from years of handling. Next to it, a stack of jazz charts, some yellowed and others scribbled with chord changes, spans nearly a decade of late-night practice sessions. He is not a professional musician. He works on elevators for a living, fixing cables, troubleshooting circuits, and crawling through shafts most people never see. But every week, without fail, Marco sits down at his upright piano and works through the same set of jazz standards, bar by bar, measure by measure. He can talk about the subtle tension in a Thelonious Monk progression as easily as he can explain the difference between a relay and a solenoid. This kind of depth does not happen by accident. Social scientists call it a time investment cue, a signal that is expensive to fake but easy to spot. Mastery in any domain, whether it is music, mechanics, or mathematics, takes thousands of hours. The cost is not just money or effort, it is opportunity. Every hour Marco spends memorizing a new run or repairing a stubborn motor is an hour he could have spent somewhere else. That is exactly why depth stands out. It is visible in the calluses on his hands, the dog-eared sheet music, the stories he tells about gigs gone sideways, or the moment a tricky repair finally worked. Observers pick up on these cues instantly. Research shows that people who display domain depth through technical vocabulary, practiced skill, or even the way they handle their tools, are judged as more reliable and more capable, even outside their area of expertise. The investment is hard to counterfeit, but the payoff is immediate. A reputation for competence, intelligence, and commitment. These are the building blocks of interestingness. Over time, the artifacts of practice, worn tools, annotated charts, stories of failure and breakthrough become the narrative capital that others remember. Depth is not flashy, but it is magnetic. It draws people in, not just for what Marco knows, but for what his dedication says about who he is. Io waits for sunset on the roof of his apartment building, camera in hand, scanning the city for pockets of shadow and neon. Most nights, he is not chasing any grand adventure, just looking for a new angle, a fresh corner of skyline, or the way headlights blur into ribbons on wet pavement. Sometimes he invites a friend from his building, sometimes he goes alone. There's no expensive gear, no plane tickets, no bucket list drama. But by the time the city quiets down, Io has a handful of photos and at least one story that did not exist that morning. Psychologists have a term for what is happening here. Novelty triggers a dopamine response that sharpens attention and locks new details into memory. Even small departures from routine, like exploring a rooftop at midnight or mapping the city by streetlight, get encoded as vivid, shareable episodes. These moments become conversational hooks, easy to recall and impossible to fake. Io's micro-adventures do not require money or status, just a willingness to say yes to something a little off script. Research on autobiographical memory shows that people who seek out these modest, unusual experiences build a richer narrative portfolio. Their stories are not about being the most daring or the most traveled, but about noticing what others overlook and carrying those moments forward. When Io recounts the night he watched a thunderstorm roll in from 12 stories up, or the time he and a neighbor discovered a hidden mural in an alley, listeners lean in. The novelty is not about spectacle. It is about breaking the pattern, making the ordinary memorable, and giving others a glimpse into a world they might have missed. For anyone, this is the second pillar of becoming interesting, living in a way that generates stories worth telling. Raphael sits at his desk, the only personal touch a small ceramic mug from Oaxaca. The office is quiet, but tension ripples below the surface. The company's new client wants a shortcut, one that would sidestep a regulation Raphael knows is there for a reason. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't play devil's advocate for the sake of argument. Instead, he lays out his position with calm precision. The rule protects both the company and the people it serves, and he won't sign off on a plan that ignores it. His reasoning is clear, his stance unwavering, and when he finishes, the conversation shifts. Colleagues remember this moment, not because Raphael won, but because he made his values visible. Studies in communication show that people who articulate a well-considered opinion, especially when it is anchored in personal experience, stand out in memory. Researchers call this the opinion plus origin effect. It's not about being loud or divisive, but about having a point of view that's rooted in something real. When Raphael explains his perspective, he's not performing for the room. He's drawing on years of work, lessons learned the hard way, and a sense of responsibility that didn't come out of nowhere. That origin story sticks. Listeners recall both the stance and the reason behind it, long after the details of the meeting fade. This kind of clarity doesn't just make someone memorable, it signals integrity and thoughtfulness. The research is consistent. People remember opinions that come with a story, not just a slogan. And when those opinions are delivered with respect and context, they invite genuine dialogue, not just debate. Raphael's approach isn't about being contrarian or seeking attention. It's about making his reasoning transparent, which in turn gives others permission to do the same. In a world crowded with noise, a clear, authentic opinion is a rare anchor. That's the final piece of the internal foundation: depth, experience, and now a stance that means something. Jonah hosts a small gathering every other Thursday, a handful of friends, mismatched chairs, and a pot of something simmering on the stove. He is not the loudest voice in the room. Instead, he listens, then drops a question that cuts through the usual chatter. Not the safe kind, no, what do you do or where are you from? Instead, he asks, what is something you changed your mind about in the last year? Or he asks, if you had to teach a class on one thing, what would it be? The effect is immediate. People lean in, rethink their answers, sometimes laugh, and admit they have never been asked that before. Social psychologist Todd Kashdan's work points to a simple fact. Curiosity predicts how much people want to keep talking to you. In studies, participants who ask open-ended, thoughtful questions are rated as warmer and more intelligent, even by strangers. These questions do not just fill silence. They invite stories, reveal contradictions, and open doors to the unexpected. Jonah's prompts are not tricks, they are signals. I want to know how you see the world, not just what you have done. Curiosity, expressed this way, becomes the first outward sign of an interesting mind. It is not about having all the answers. It is about being the person who makes everyone else more interesting too. Tomas moves between worlds with ease. Morning finds him in a boardroom, dissecting risk models and quarterly returns. By late afternoon, he is trading his suit for a wetsuit, chasing waves until the sun drops. On weekends, he is lost in a studio, paint streaked across his hands, a canvas evolving under restless strokes. To some, he is the CEO who smells of salt water. To others, the surfer, fluent in derivatives and color theory. This kind of layered identity resists neat categories. It is the same spark found in the fighter jotting poetry before a match, or the financier who spends nights blending oils instead of numbers. Research in social psychology shows that people who cross domains, who are both analyst and artist, are rated higher for openness, creativity, and, most tellingly, interestingness. The friction between roles, a disciplined executive who is also a risk-taker in the ocean, creates intrigue. Tomas does not collect hobbies for effect. He lives contradictions, and that multi-dimensionality draws people in, hinting at stories beneath the surface. Ethan leans against a cafe window, navy shirt buttoned to the collar, boots scuffed just so. His style isn't loud, but every detail feels deliberate, down to the silver ring he has worn since college. He once joked that his wardrobe is like a playlist. Every piece should say something about where he has been and what matters to him. Research backs up what Ethan intuits. Within seconds, people read both warmth and competence from appearance. A coherent style acts as shorthand for intention, signaling not just taste, but a point of view. Social psychologists call this the warmth and competence snap judgment. Studies show that first impressions form in under 5 seconds, and clothing is often the first data point. Ethan's approach isn't about chasing trends or signaling status. It's about using presentation as an honest extension of identity and about showing intention. For anyone wanting to build a style that says more, the process is practical. Audit what you wear, decide what feels authentic, invest in a few quality basics, add 1 or 2 signature details, and keep it consistent. Each step is less about impressing others, more about bringing intention to the surface, making the invisible visible in a way that others can read at a glance. Right now, depth leaves a stronger mark than performance. Social psychologists agree. A fighter who writes poetry or a CEO who surfs draws us in because contradiction signals real substance. In a world chasing spectacle, genuine range is rare, and it is that lived complexity we remember. Share your story below.